안녕하세요. 나이린님. 오늘은 12월 29일입니다. 일단 중요한 건 오늘 운동을 쉬고요. 어제 12시간? 13시간 자고 일어나서 어제 저녁에 운동 갔다 와서 양파 3개랑 양배추 하나 이렇게 씻어서 썰었는데 몸살이 났어요. 되게 신기한 게 운동을 하면 몸살이 안 나는데 왜 자꾸 야채를 손질하면 몸살이 나는 게 왜일까요? 칼질하면 몸살이 나는 것 같아요. 어쨌든 너무 어제 갑자기 딱 야채를 썰고 나온 후에 너무너무 몸이 힘들어가지고 잤는데 오늘 일찍 일어나려고 했는데 12시간 넘게 잔 것 같아요. 그래도 수면의 질은 좋다. 그래서 컨디션이 좋습니다. 그리고 이제 마법이 시작되었기 때문에 되게 감정적으로 안정적이에요. 뭐 크게 변화는 없는 것 같아요. 그러면 오늘은 일단 독서노트를 할 텐데, 원래 독서노트 할 때 한국책부터 먼저 읽는데 오늘은 계획대로, 왜냐면은 영어 원서를, 그러니까 영어 북노츠를 한 25분 이상 하기로 결정을 했는데, 왜냐면 요즘에 조금 원서를 안 읽는 것 같아서. 근데 그 루틴의 차례를 뒤로 미루다 보니까 너무 계속 짧게 읽는 것 같아서 이틀 동안 하루에 원띵을 못했어요. 그래서 차라리 원서를 먼저 시작해서 25분을 읽고 난 다음에 한글 책을 읽어보도록 하겠습니다. 그러면 오늘은 원서부터 읽고, 영어로 얘기할 걸 그랬나? Anyways, 25 minutes, alarm set, and then I can get started. Okay, fortunately, to acquire rationality is not complicated. It simply requires knowing and working through a three-step process. First, we must become aware of what we shall call the great irrationality. This is a function of continual moods and feelings that we experience in life below the level of consciousness. 하지 마세요. 리킹을 너무 심하게 해가지고. 괜찮으세요? 왜 그러세요? 처음에 자꾸 시작하면 코 골고 자는 거 아니면 자꾸 소리를 내는데. 괜찮으세요? 재판님. Okay, so when we plan or make decisions, we are not aware of how deeply these moods and feelings skew the thinking process. They create in our thinking pronounced biases that are so deeply ingrained in us that we see evidence of them in all cultures and periods of history. These biases, by distorting reality, lead to the mistakes and ineffective decisions that plague our lives. Being aware of them, we can begin to counterbalance their effects. Second, we must understand the nature of what we shall call high-grade irrationality. 제퍼님, 이리 와보세요. 제퍼님, 이리 와보세요. Come here. Come here. Being aware of them, we can begin to counterbalance their effects. Second, we must understand the nature of what we shall call high-grade irrationality. This occurs when our emotions become inflamed, generally because of sudden pressures. As we think about our anger, excitement, resentment, or suspicion, it intensifies into a reactive state. Everything we see or hear is interpreted through the lens of this emotion. We become more sensitive and more prone to other emotional reactions. Impatience and resentment can bleed into anger and deep distrust. These reactive states are what lead people to violence, to many obsessions, to uncontrollable greed, or to desires to control another person. This form of irrationality is the source of more acute problems, crises, conflicts, and disastrous decisions. Understanding how this type of irrationality operates can allow us to recognize the reactive state as it happens and pull back before we do something we regret. Third, we need to enact the certain strategies and exercises that will strengthen the thinking part of the brain and give it more power in the eternal struggle with our emotions. Emotions are continually affecting our thought processes and decisions below the level of our awareness. And the most common emotion of them all is the desire for pleasure and the avoidance of pain. Our thoughts almost inevitably revolve around this desire. We simply recoil from entertaining ideas that are unpleasant or painful to us. We imagine we're looking for the truth or being realistic, when in fact we are holding on to ideas that bring a release from tension and soothe our egos, make us feel superior. This pleasure principle in thinking is the source of all of our mental biases. If you believe that you are somehow immune to any of the following biases, it is a simple example of the pleasure principle in action. Instead, it is best to search and see how they continue to operate inside you, as always learn how to identify such irrationality in others. Confirmation bias. I look at the evidence and arrive at my decisions through more or less rational processes. But because of the pleasure principle and its unconscious influence, we manage to find the evidence that confirms what we want to believe. This is known as confirmation bias. In the end, people want to hear their own ideas and prefaces and confirmed by their expert opinion. They will interpret what you say in light of what they want to hear, and if you advise runs counter their desires, they will find some way to dismiss your opinion, your so-called expertise. The more powerful the person, the more they are subject to this form of confirmation bias. When investigating confirmation biases in the world, take a look at theories that seem a little too good to be true. Conviction bias. I believe in this idea so strong, it must be true. Those, on the other hand, who express nuances, whose tone is more hesitant, reveal oneness and self-doubt. They're probably lying, or so we think. This bias makes us susceptible to salesmen and demagogues who display conviction as a way to convince and deceive. They know that people are hungry for entertainment, so they cloak their half-truths with dramatic effects. Appearance bias. I understand the people at the world. I see them just as they are. We see people not as they are, but as they appear to us. and these appearances are usually misleading. First, people have trained themselves in social situations to present a front that is appropriate and that will be judged positively. They seem to be in favor of noblest causes, always presenting themselves as hardworking and conscientious. We take these mass for reality. Second, we are prone to fall for the halo effect. When we see certain negative or positive qualities in a person, social awareness, intelligence, other positive or negative qualities are implied that favor us. People who are good looking generally seem more trustworthy, particularly politicians. If a person is successful, we imagine they're probably also ethical, conscientious, and deserving of their good fortune. This obscures the fact that many people who have got ahead and done so through less than moral actions, which they cleverly disguise from view. The group bias. My ideas and my own. I do not listen to the group. I'm not a conformist. We are social animals by nature. The feeling of isolation, of difference from the group, is depressing and terrifying. We experience a tremendous relief when we find others who think the same way we do. In fact, we are motivated to take up ideas and opinions because they bring us this relief. We are unaware of this pull, and so imagine we have to come to certain ideas and completely on our own. I was out of the earth. Focus, alien, focus. Yet, few would ever admit this influence on their thought patterns. The blame bias. I learn from experience and mistakes. Mistakes and failures at least the need to explain. We want to learn the lesson and not repeat the experience. But in truth, we do not like to look closely at what we did. Our introspection is limited. Our natural response is to blame others, circumstances, or momentary lapse of judgment. The reason for these biases is that it's often too painful to look at our mistakes. It calls into question our feelings of superiority. It pokes at our ego. Superiority bias. I'm different, I'm more rational than others, and I'm more ethical as well. Few would say this to people in conversation. It sounds arrogant, but in numerous opinion polls and studies, when asked to compare themselves with others, people generally express a variation of this. It's the equivalent of an optical illusion. We cannot seem to see our faults and irrationalities, only those of others. We know, however, the reality, and so some people, perhaps all of us, are merely deceiving ourselves. Rationality and ethical qualities must be achieved through awareness and effort. They do not come naturally. They come through a maturation process. Beware the inflaming factors. Low-grade emotions continue to affect our thinking, and they originate from our own impulses. For instance, the desire for pleasing and converting thoughts. High-grade emotion, however, comes at certain moments, reaches an explosive pitch, and is generally sparked by something external, a person who gets under our skin, or particular circumstances. The level of arousal is higher and our attention is captured completely. The more we think about the emotion, the stronger it gets, which makes us focus even more on it, and so on and so forth. Our minds turn into the emotion, and everything reminds us of our anger or excitement. We become reactive. Because we are unable to bear the tension this brings, High-grade emotion usually culminates in some rash action with disastrous consequences. In the middle of such an attack, we feel possessed, as if a second limbic self has taken over. It is best to be aware of these factors so that you can stop the mind from tunneling and prevent the religious action that you will always come to regret. You should also be aware of high-grade rationality in others to either get out of their way or help bring them back to reality. Trigger points from early childhood. In early childhood, we're at our most sensitive and vulnerable. Our relationship to our parents had a much greater impact on us the further back in time we go. The same can be said for any early public experience. These vulnerabilities and wounds remain buried deep within our minds. Sometimes we try to repress the memory of these influences if they happen to be negative, great fears, or humiliations. Sometimes, however, they are associated with positive emotions, experiences of love and attention that we continually want to relive. Later in life, in a person or event will trigger memory of this positive or negative experience, and with it release any favorite chemicals or hormones associated with the memory. Take, for example, a young man who had a distant, narcissistic mother. As an infant or child, he experienced her coldness as abandonment, and to be abandoned must mean he was somehow unworthy of her love. Or similarly, a new sibling on the scene caused his mother to give him much less attention, which he equally experienced as abandonment. Later in life in a relationship, a woman might hint at disapproval of some trait or action of his, all of which is part of the healthy relationship. This will hit a trigger point. She's noticing his flaws, which he imagines precedes her abandonment of him. He feels a powerful rush of emotion, a sense of imminent betrayal. He does not see the source of this. It is beyond his control. He overreacts, accuses, withdraws, all of which leads to the very thing he feared, abandonment. His reaction was just some reflection in his mind, not to the reality. This is the height of irrationality. The way to recognize this in yourself and in others is by noticing behaviors that is suddenly childish in its intensity and seemingly out of character. This could center on any key emotion. It could be fear of losing control, of failure. In this case, we react by withdrawing from the situation and the presence of others, like a child calling up into a ball. If sudden illness, brought on by the intense fear, will conveniently cause us to have to leave the scene. It could be love desperately searching to recreate a close parental or a sibling relationship in the present, triggered by someone who vaguely reminds us of the lost paradise. It could be extreme mistrust originating from the authority figure in early childhood, who disappointed or betrayed us, generally the father. This often triggers a sudden rebellious attitude. The great danger here is that in misreading the present and reacting to something in the past, we create a conflict, disappointments, and mistrust that only strengthen the wound. In some ways, we are programmed to repeat our experience in the present. Our only defense is awareness as it is happening. We can recognize and trigger by experiencing emotions that are unusually primal, more uncontrollable than normal. They trigger tears, the depression, or excessive hope. People under the spell of these emotions will often have a very different tone of voice and body language, as if they were physically reliving a moment from early life. In the midst of such an attack, we must struggle to detach ourselves and contemplate the possible source, the wound in early childhood. and the parents, and has locked us into this deep understanding of ourselves and our vulnerabilities, key step toward becoming rational. Sudden gains or losses, sudden success or winnings can be very dangerous. Neurologically, chemicals are released in the brain that give a powerful jolt of inner growth and energy, leading to the desire to repeat this experience. It can be the start of any kind of addiction and manic behavior. Also, when gains come quickly, we tend to lose sight of the basic wisdom that true success, to really last, must come through hard work. We acquire feelings of grandiosity. We become especially resistant to anyone who tries to warn us. They don't understand. We tell ourselves. Because this cannot be sustained, we experience an inevitable fall, which is all the more painful, leading to the depression part of the cycle. Although gamblers are the most prone to this, it equally applies to business people during bubbles and to people who gain certain attention from the public. Unexpected losses and a string of losses unequally create irrational reactions. The solution is simple. Whenever you experience an unusual gains or losses, there is precisely the time to step back and calmly balance them with some necessary pessimism or optimism. Be actually aware of sudden success and attention. They are not built on anything that lasts, and they have an addictive pull, and the pull is always painful. Rising pressure. The people around you generally appear sane and in control of their lives, but put any of them in stressful circumstances, with the pressure rising, and you will see a different reality. The cool mask of self-control comes off. They suddenly lash out in anger, reveal a paranoid streak, and become hypersensitive and often petty. Under stress or any threat, the most primitive parts of the brain are aroused and engaged, overwhelming people's reasoning powers. In fact, stress or tension can reveal flaws in people they have carefully concealed from view. It is often wise to observe people in such moments, precisely as a way to judge their true character. Whenever you notice rising pressure and stress levels in your life, you must watch yourself carefully. Monitor any signs of unusual brittleness or sensitivity, sudden suspicions, fears that is proportionate to the circumstances. Observe with as much detachment as possible, finding time and space to be alone. You need a perspective. Never imagine that someone who can withstand rising stress without emotional leakage. It is not possible, but through self-awareness and reflection, you can prevent yourself from making decisions you will come to regret. The group effect. This is the high grade variety of the group bias. Being in a group does not stimulate independent reasoning but the rather intense desire to belong. It is often best to avoid the group setting if possible, in order to maintain your reasoning powers or to enter such ones with the maximum skepticism. Demagogues in politics or the media try to stir a continuous sense of panic, urgency, and outrage. They must keep the emotional levels high. Your defense is simple. Consider your reasoning powers, your ability to think for yourself, your most precious possession. Resent any kind of intrusion. Open your independent mind by others. When you feel you're in the presence of a demagogue, become doubly wary and analytical. The irrational simply changes its look and its fashions. Rationality is something to be acquired by individuals. First and foremost, it is existence throughout history in all cultures and people of high rationality, the types who have made progress possible. Warren Buffett, to name but a few, all of these types share certain qualities: a realistic appraisal of themselves and their weaknesses, a devotion to truth and reality, a tolerant attitude toward people, and the ability to reach goals that they have set. The second factor is that almost all of us, at some point in our lives, and experience and moments of greater rationality. This often comes within what we shall call maker's mindset. We have a project to get done, perhaps with a deadline. The only emotion we can afford is excitement and energy. Other emotions simply makes it impossible to concentrate. Because we have to get results, we become exceptionally practical. We focus on the work, our mind calm, and our ego intruding. If people try to intrude or impact us with emotions, we resent it. These moments as if fleeting is few weeks or an hours and reveal the original self that is waiting to come out. It just requires some awareness and some practice. Know yourself thoroughly. The emotional self derives on ignorance. Ignorance. The moment you are aware of how it operates and dominates you, at some moment it loses its hold on you and can be tamed. Therefore, your first step toward liberation is always inward. You want to catch that emotional self in action. For this purpose, you must reflect on how you operate under stress, what particular weaknesses come out in such moments, the desire to please, to bully or control, deep levels of mistrust. Look at your decisions, especially those that have been ineffective. Can you see a pattern, an underlying insecurity that impulses them? Examine your strengths. What makes you different from other people? This will help you decide upon goals that match with your long-term interests and that are aligned with your skills. By knowing and valuing what marks you as different, you will also be able to resist and pull up the group bias and effect. 아이리님 수고했어요. 원서 오늘 그래도 원띵 잘했습니다.